that we're just going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the February edition of Monroe County Now's chapter meeting. My name is Mandy Yates and I am the president this year. And I was just going to go through a few things that I've been working on for our chapter, and then I will pass it on to the rest of the board. And then, if we have some time between the end of the business part of our meeting going into our guest speakers, then we can just open up the floor and just tell us what's going on with you. All right, so got to look at my agenda here. So the main things that I have been working on for the chapter include, well, I got us signed up for the Positive Link Beyond the Diagnosis HIV Visibility Walk, and I'm going to share the link in the chat if you would like to join our team. So this is something that we've done a couple of years prior, and so this will be our third year. Last year they had to do a virtual walk, and this year they're going to have a virtual walk / celebration. So my idea for this year is to actually, if the weather cooperates, so it's going to be on April 30th. If the weather cooperates, my goal is to get our team together, meeting at a park somewhere, probably around downtown or even Bryan Park, whatever's easiest. And we'll actually have a walk together. If you, we would have like COVID protocols and wearing your masks and keeping your distance and so on and so forth. But yeah, I want everyone to join our team. And most importantly, the walk is designed to raise money for Positive Link, and they provide free HIV testing here in Bloomington. So there is the link to join our team if you would like. You can also donate through that link, but we would love to have as many people as possible join us. Another thing that's, it's at the bottom of the agenda under upcoming dates. Monroe County Now is a sponsor of the National Panhellenic Black Lives Matter Walk, which will happen on April 10th. And we are a sponsor where we'll be donating items such as water and just supplies that they need for their walk. I really don't have any other information except for the date at this point, but at our next meeting and going into April, we will update everyone with what is going on with that walk. Other than that, just, I've been working on some business stuff, getting our dues settled with National, and also working on getting our annual report for 2020 finished. So anyway, I do thank everybody for your patience. January into February was a little rough for me personally, so I really appreciate everyone's patience with me, especially my board. And that's pretty much all I have going on. I do have some dates at the end of this agenda that include national dates, and you can see all of that at the bottom. One is the Now Racial Justice Summit. It's something that they do every year. I have a registration link as well to that. It's happening this coming week. It says the 24th, but I'm looking at my calendar. It's on Wednesday. It starts at 11. It doesn't give an end time. So if anyone who's in state or on the national board would like to let us know how long that lasts, I think it pretty much goes all day from what I remember last year. And then also National has a campaign called 100 Days of a Feminist Agenda. And the next one is on Thursday from 5 to 7 p.m. I also included the registration link to that. And then I actually did not put on here what the topic is, but I believe it's about healthcare workers, if I'm not mistaken. And then I also included a bunch of the future topics for this campaign. And it looks like we have a national board meeting on March 13th and 14th. Registration to that will be sent to NOW members soon. And then the only other thing that I have is our March chapter meeting is scheduled for Sunday, March 28th from noon to 1:30. Abby, Natalia, and I are working on the speaker or the panelists for that meeting. So stay tuned for that information. It will be included on our social media, our website, and in our upcoming newsletter. And that's all I have. I'm going to pass it over to Abby for any information she has for us.
Hi. So as Mandy said, by the way, it says that my internet connection is unstable, so sorry if like I freeze or glitch out. But yeah, as Mandy said, we're assembling a panel for March about and assembling speakers, and we're hoping that it will also highlight some of the work that elected officials, especially elected officials in town, are doing in terms of local legislation and other efforts like that. I don't have as much of an update other than a kind of personal note. So my birthday is in like exactly 2 weeks from now. um, and it's also coming up on like the first birthday of Monroe County Mutual Aid. And so I'm also going to be doing a fundraiser for Monroe County Mutual Aid, just kind of for my birthday. And the funds will generally be used to help. We spend a lot of money specifically on phone cards for people experiencing homelessness, like phones and phone cards and stuff like that, kind of on a monthly basis. And so that and also storage units for people experiencing homelessness. That's where a lot of the funds in the group have been going, as well as like incidental groceries and stuff like that for people who need other stuff that can't be provided by food pantries. And so I'm going to be doing like a little fundraiser, maybe starting a week from now, and going to be trying to raise money for that. And the reason why we do that is because like hotels for homeless, according to the grant funding, they're only supposed to use the money in their bank accounts for specifically hotel rooms. And so we kind of supplement stuff that they can't get. A lot of people experiencing homelessness have rented out storage units to put their stuff while they try to find a new place. And then sometimes it becomes really hard to keep up with paying for the fees and storage units. So we try to help wherever we can. And also phone cards are anywhere between like $25 to $50 a month. And if people don't have access to phone services, then they don't have access to getting in touch with their caseworkers or getting in touch with social services or stuff like that. So it is a fairly important need, and it's one that's very easy to fill. So I'm probably going to be doing a fundraiser themed around that. So just want
Abby,
to keep people on the lookout.
do you have a link that you want to share in the chat for people to donate?
I actually use, I don't have an official, I have a Cash App. I think that's my Cash App for mutual aid funds. I also collect through my personal Venmo, which is maybe a little bit less sketch, a little more sketchy, but I have like I keep bank books and receipts and stuff like that. If anyone asks for receipts, I provide them. We used to have like an institutional that helped collect funds, but then they had some leadership turnover. So that kind of makes things a little bit frustrating.
Well, cool.
I'm probably going to use like a PayPal pool kind of thing. So it's like a PayPal pool, sort of like a GoFundMe, except they don't take a cut out of the fees in the way that Facebook and GoFundMe do. So just people, and you can kind of see a record of people who donated and how much they donated in terms of accountability with stuff like that.
Awesome. I mean, it's up to Charlotte, but I'm totally happy if you want to have that in the newsletter so that we can help out.
Go for it. Send me stuff.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see. Natalia, do you have anything that you want to let us know?
Okay, let's see. I am feeling very stifled, not having like 5 different screens and just working off one. But no, I just want to mention a couple of us have been working on advocacy for different issues around around what's going on with the different legislation with the homelessness protection. I think the ordinance is called Protections for People Experiencing Homelessness. And it is going to committee of the whole next week on February 24th. So that means that, let's see, and then it should be back for second reading on the 3rd. 99% of the time, March 3rd is when it's going to be voted on. So if you have any, issues or strong opinion, I know a lot of us have been working on this issue. It'd be great to get your public opinion in at some of those meetings. So that's kind of the bulk of it. It's going to come up fast. Like I feel like they're going to start voting on it soon. So any kind of any kind of advocacy you can give around that would be great. I'll put the link in the chat for Committee of the Whole this Wednesday, the 17th, or this Wednesday, the 24th, at I think it's 6 o'clock. At 6 o'clock this week. So that's all I have. Thanks.
So can I just ask, is that a city thing?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So the ordinance, that's a city ordinance.
Okay.
And that is, I think they had some various names, but the particular ordinance, and I can put the link to the the verbiage on that ordinance is called, but it's Protections for People Experiencing Homelessness, and it gives more protections and more advocacy to people in that space.
Okay. If it's going to be on Wednesday, maybe we could use that for our action this coming Tuesday.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, 6 o'clock. I know Committee of the Whole sometimes meets anytime between 5:30 and 6:30, but it's 6 o'clock this time, I think. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Charlotte, you're up.
I don't have much except to say that please, if you're not already, follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Also, if you're interested in getting something out there that ascribes to our 6 core issues, which pretty much hard not to be if you're into things in activism in Bloomington, shoot me an email and we can maybe get you set up with a blog post, a guest blog post on our wonderful blog. That's pretty much it. I'm going to drop my email in the doobly-doo. That's
awesome. Thank you. All right, Amalia.
So just we're doing fundraiser Fridays every other Friday. So we have 2 a month. We just had one this Friday, and it was for what's called the Rising Rainbow Coalition. So that information is on our social media if you would care to donate to them. And we are also in March for Women's History Month going to be doing some matching donations. So we have 1 or 2 very generous donors who will be doing matching gifts. So we're going to do that all month, and we'll start promoting that probably this next week. So it's a great time to donate to now. And as you probably know, we do with a lot of our funds, we don't have a lot of operating funds. So what we do with our funds is generally donate to other social services in need. So if you're donating to us, you're donating to them. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have for fundraising right now.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, Shruti and Eva. Hi, Eva.
Hi, everyone. So I just have a couple of things. As you know, the Indiana legislature is in session, and there's a number of both good and bad bills that we have been tracking. The good ones are, there's a couple of different bills talking about parental leave and things like that. There were actually competing bills, and one of the good ones is already sort of failed and not made it out of committee. Then on the reproductive justice side, there are a lot of really negative bills, and they have been moving forward. So we've been tracking them, and on our Take Action Tuesdays, we've been putting out scripts. Hold on. We've been getting scripts on, to call your legislatures with the bill numbers and the information about them. We'll keep doing that and keep tracking them. I think at this point, the negative reproductive justice bills, there's not much way to stop them except to raise awareness about the negative impacts they're going to have and what people are trying to do. And then hopefully there will be court battles to stop them later on. So that's my positive spin on the negative news coming out of the legislature. We've also joined every, other public interest group in not telling people to go to the courthouse to show up to give testimony, or attend the hearings because of the no mask requirement, or the fact that there is not a mask requirement and other sort of safety issues. However, people do seem to be going. So if people are interested in doing that, there's a lot of, there's information on how to do that. It's sort of complicated. You have to sign up in advance and that kind of thing. But I guess we're not going to actively tell people to do that. But if there might be people who are vaccinated or something and feel comfortable doing it. So that's an option as well. So I guess we'd love to hear from people on other issues that, we should be tracking or following. And I just encourage everyone to look at our scripts on Tuesday, and there's information in some of our newsletters as well on upcoming bills and other advocacy issues. So that's it.
Awesome, thank you. Oh, I lost my place here. All right, sorry. Julie, what do you have for us?
Hi, I'm Julie Hardesty. I'm the membership director for Monroe County now this year, and just kind of tooling along, sending out monthly reminders for membership renewal as those are coming up. And membership is available on a sliding scale. And I can drop some links into the chat here. If you're not a member and you want to sign up for a new membership, we have a Google form for that. If it's time for you to renew your membership, you can do that through the national site and include our chapter number to affiliate with our chapter. The only other thing we have going on right now for membership is that we are almost ready to send out a brief survey, and this is available. This is going to be going out to members and to friends. So you can watch for that in, I think, the upcoming newsletter and on social media. And we're hoping to use this survey to learn what kinds of community engagement activities are of interest to our members and to the friends that we have out there, and what you would like to fundraise to support locally. So in this, I want to thank again Tyler Ellison, Jess Hoopengardner, and Shelby Kupker for their report about how Monroe County now can increase engagement in the community. That was really helpful for constructing the survey. So that is what I have for membership. If anyone has any questions, you can also email me at that Gmail address.
Awesome, thank you so much. All right, so we do have a few minutes here before we get started on our panel. So I'm just going to open up the floor to all the babies in the background. Or anything you all want to talk about. I noticed Apple's on here, Tammy Jo's on here, and Jess and Ashley. Welcome back. Thanks for coming to our meeting today. Feel free to speak.
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry I'm not in the best energetic state. I'm now in month 3 of a sinus infection. So I apologize to the group. I missed one of my Her Story articles. Charlotte was very understanding about that. The rest of my life is I've started a new book in the Blake Trudeau series. So when I have the energy, that's what I'm working on. It's great to see you all.
You too. And thank you so much for your blogs. I always love reading them.
Yeah, you've been so dedicated for like 3 years. I think we can forgive a missed blog or two. So if Tammy Jo wants to take a sabbatical, I'm gonna give it to her. So
Well, hopefully if I have to go on another round of antibiotics, I won't turn out to be allergic to this one, because that was pretty much a 3-week nightmare. So
oh, I'm so sorry.
Anyone else have anything for us?
Does Maddie have something to contribute, Amalia? Hmm. He's like, no.
Any thoughts on the rollout of the vaccine? I was actually listening to Pod Save America before I came on here, and they had Dr. Fauci on about the rollout of the vaccine. All right. Well,
It's happening. That's all I'm excited about.
Not fast enough. That actually reminds me, I'm gonna go sign up for the extra doses, which I heard that there aren't that many every day. So only
Right.
like 2 or 3 in Monroe County. Amalia, it looks like you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. I don't know what's going on. Oh, congratulations, Apple. All right. Well, does anyone else have anything? Otherwise, we can just move on to our panel. Go right ahead, Abby, whenever you're ready.
Awesome. So it's my honor to introduce to you the members of the Rainbow Coalition at Indiana University. And so the way the format of this panel works is that we have about, I'll introduce everyone by reading their bios, and we have a set of around 6 prepared questions that they were sent ahead of time, and then we'll have time for audience questions afterwards. And you can put your audience questions in the chat, or you can use raise hand function at the end of the first round of questions to indicate that you'd like to ask a question of our amazing panelists. And we have 3 panelists with us today, and I will introduce them one by one. And so first up, we have Lindsay Batties from the Rising Rainbow Coalition. She is a graduate member of the Rainbow Coalition at IU, and she played an integral role in authoring and passing legislation that created a historic and equitable framework for student governance on Indiana University's campus. And last December, she obtained the Bachelor of Science in Public Affairs degree from the O'Neill School of Public and Environmental Affairs. She's also the founder and chief executive officer of the Rising Rainbow Coalition, Incorporated, which is a nonpartisan nonprofit organization whose mission is to strengthen the socioeconomic conditions and civic engagement of marginalized communities in Indiana. This community coalition is building a connectedness amongst diverse people from various marginalized backgrounds to achieve equal access, equal opportunity, and the ability to move ahead for all in the state of Indiana. She finds value in building coalitions both domestically and internationally. Second, we have Rebecca Amaya from IU Student Congress. And Rebecca is a junior at IU studying law and public policy and critical race theory. And thanks, Mandy. She is a congressperson representing off-campus students in the IU Student Congress and is the chair for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And third up, we have Ashley Elaine from the Culture Club at IU. Ashley is a junior studying law and public policy with a minor in arts management. She's the founding president of Culture Club, which is an organization that promotes diversity and inclusion. She's also an IU Student Government Congress member, the vice president of I Am Worthy, an active member of the Rainbow Coalition, and the secretary of Crimson Elite Diamonds, which is a majorette team on campus. And Mandy, you can drop their donation links in the chat as well. And so the kind of the theme that we had for for Black History Month and also for this panel was coalition building. And so for the panelist questions, I'll start with Lindsay for the first question, move to Rebecca, and then Ashley. And then for the second question, we'll kind of rotate so people get different turns in answering the question first. So the first question is pretty straightforward. So what is your definition of a strong and effective coalition? And starting with Lindsay.
Yeah, so I'd say a strong and effective coalition is first one that has defined the problem that it's trying to address. Like knowing your why and being consistent and sticking to creating, action steps or action plans or tactical solutions to target that problem is one of the very first steps in, building a strong and effective coalition. But in terms of, thinking about the various stakeholders who are a part of a coalition, you have to ensure that your coalition is, say, diverse. It's a safe space for diversity, or also a brave space, a concept that comes up a lot in DEI, and that you're also thinking about engaging the community, stakeholders who might not necessarily be a part of your coalition, but may still be affected by, say, like the overall structural institutions, say like of oppression, white supremacy, misogyny, etc., that is affecting the people within your coalition. So I'll leave the floor for say like Ashley and Rebecca to expand more. But yeah, I find those the most important.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Yeah, I think Lindsay said it perfectly. I think the two things that I like to focus on a lot are exactly what she mentioned. Is it a space where people feel comfortable being a part of? Because you can definitely have shared goals, interests, things that you're fighting for, a common goal. But at the end of the day, if people don't feel comfortable in a space sharing their opinions, voicing their concerns, or being an active part of how you're mobilizing and strategizing, it doesn't necessarily matter, because you don't have people that are kind of all in and feel supported by the community or the coalition you're trying to build. So for me, I think it's definitely about creating a space where everyone feels like they can share their piece, voice their opinions and concerns. And I think that that's what leads to a productive coalition and pushing forward like whatever your common goal, interest, or fight is.
Thank you. Ashley?
Yes, I think that they said kind of summed up what I was thinking, but just an extra emphasis on community. You have to have people engaged. They have to be informed, having education on why this affects me and why this is my problem too, or my shared issue is super important. So once they get that education and once they're involved, and if they feel like they're a part of a community, a part of something bigger, they'll keep coming back, because they'll feel like they have a voice, they have people to fellowship with, and we have a common shared interest. And so I think, just to summarize what they're saying, community is definitely number one to having an effective coalition.
Thank you so much. And so our second question is, your most recent major project involved increasing representation in IU student government, and what you've done is nothing short of amazing. So can you walk us through the process from the moment when you realized that a change needed to be made, to the outreach you did to other student organizations to form what is now the Rainbow Coalition at IU? And we'll start with Rebecca for this one.
Yeah, so I, over the summer, joined IU student government. And that was, I think, the first time that I realized how many problems there were, but what the biggest problem was the lack of representation. So I had been involved with IUSG in the past, but I just hadn't, I'd kind of stopped, and I didn't see it going anywhere. And then joining Congress in the summer again, I realized exactly what the opposite of what we said a good coalition was that IU student government was very, it was very white, male, like barely any women, no people of color. It was not a safe space. I did not feel like I could voice my opinions or my concerns. It was not welcoming of other people, and it would consistently shut down any ideas or propositions to increase representation, which is exactly what we tried to do over the summer. And so that was my first kind of like, oh, something is really wrong, something needs to happen. And so we tried to pass a bill that increased diversity. But of course, it was shot down because there was no representation and there was an overarching majority of people that opposed it. And that's when I realized, like, oh, we need people to rally around this. We need more support. We need members of the community that are affected by this to come together and kind of voice their collective concern for this, because that just was never present in IU student government and in the Congress before. And so that's kind of what led to the creation of the Rainbow Coalition in the fall. And I'll let Lindsay speak a little bit more about that, or Ashley.
Thank you. And Ashley? And then Lindsay.
Yes, so my involvement started in our CIU during the school year. I found out about this group being created through a group chat, which was very instrumental of like spreading the word. I started just showing up. I started attending meetings and listening. And by doing these two things, I was able to become more informed. And I understood that IUSG is not perfect and it needed a lot of work. So regarding outreach and, getting people involved, it was really easy to start spreading the words. We used a lot of group meetings, a lot of Instagram. And I kind of just figured that, the more people that know about it, of course, everybody will be on board because it was something that was affecting all students.
Lindsay?
Yeah, so for myself, I kind of wanted to give like a little brief context or background for when I first realized IUSG had some structural or institutional issues. And so my first impression was freshman year. I'm new on campus at Indiana University. And so there's like this table of students and, they're just like reaching out to various, students walking by in the Forest dining hall. And so they basically tell me about IU student government, and they tell me like, oh, they're campaigning for seats, and they're like, oh, you should join the Slack, etc. And so I somewhat get involved with members of IUSG, but don't necessarily get involved in IUSG, because I saw how within that Slack, there was really no advocacy for issues that students were facing. It really seemed like students were really running for seats just to have something to put on their resume or some, form of power leadership role, rather than thinking about the student body, like what is affecting the student body or what is marginalizing certain students. And so from that, I was like, maybe IUSG, let me just leave it alone. I was a freshman. I was like, let me just find my own little space somewhere else to get involved on campus. And so years later, I start the Rising Rainbow Coalition, a nonprofit, as mentioned earlier. And so I was like recruiting members, and Rebecca was, one of those people who wanted to be a part of Rising Rainbow Coalition. And with that, she actually notified me about what was currently going on with IUSG after she had been in the summer congressional section and put forth a bill that did not even make it out of committee. Like it didn't get really any consideration, no vote. And basically she said like, Lindsay, you're already doing like coalition building. You should come on to RCIU and help build a coalition here. And so with that, basically, I started seeing even more so how students that, of course, me being a Black disabled student, I already knew how students of various marginalized identities are dismissed on IU's campus. But I started hearing from, the other students that were in the, I guess, like the first wave of RCIU members about the issues that were going on relative to IU student government. Like we all know the various issues that marginalized students face on IU's campus, but in terms of IUSG, learning about the fact that there was a lack of representation, which I noticed freshman year and kind of I guess, didn't see it as a space for myself because of that lack of representation. But later, with Rebecca onboarding me, I basically saw the issue and was like, you know what? Basically, something needs to be done. If anyone's going to do it, it's going to be us. And so building that solidarity amongst diverse students is where I first saw like the need that there needs to be more representation in IUSG, especially when hundreds of students from various backgrounds were talking about concerns and dismissal.
So kind of related to some of the challenges that you've faced in seeing the problems that IU student government had and ways that they could improve. So what were some of the disappointing obstacles or more promising moments that you encountered as you started, as you worked on this project to advocate for more representation? And we'll start with Ashley.
Yeah, so a promising moment was the traction it was gaining. A lot of students understood the message and what was going on really well. And the education process was very easy for people to grasp, and they knew what was going on, and they felt connected to, you know, needing more transparency, needing more support from IUSG, needing more diversity. The thing that was kind of disheartening was the amount of opposition, and it wasn't a lot of people, but it seemed like those key people held a lot of power. And it was hard as a student, because I wasn't a part of IUSG then, to see IUSG members saying like they don't care about the diversity. They rather for it to be more status, just the different things that people were expressing, or, you know, blatantly just dismissing that diversity was something that was needed in IUSG was hard to see because, you know, you're fighting for something that's important to you, you know, all the history that America has, and then just to have students blatantly, you know, just say that's not important and they're supposed to be representing us was very hard. So I think that was our biggest opposition. And that was most like saddening that people were still like opposing it or arguing for whatever personal reasons they had. But what kind of made it promising was that there was more students banding together than those who were trying to tear it down.
Yeah, and sometimes it can be very frustrating when it feels like those, even if it's just a few voices, that those voices are very loud and by people who are in power. Lindsay?
Yeah, so for myself, and this definitely, you know, piggybacks off of Ashley's response, but basically, one of the most disappointing obstacles, or say like a couple, were say like the pushback that we got from, you know, members of IUSG, leadership in IUSG, people within the executive branch, leadership within Congress, and so forth. And so that was not only disappointing in the sense that, you know, people were questioning our concerns, like trying to dismiss them. Like, we're saying we're not getting enough representation. We're saying that it's really hard under the current system for us to even possibly get a chance to have a seat in Congress, and you're not listening to us. And with that, there were also people that looked like us, people of marginalized identities, who tried to dismiss us. And I think that kind of hits on, you know, there's a saying in the Black community, not all skin folk are kinfolk, in the sense that not everyone that say is actually marginalized is going to say work with you in a sense to advance, say, your community or overall marginalized communities. And that was really disappointing because it seemed like the students that were in IUSG, or say the minor few that made it in that looked like us, were thinking, you know, we got in just fine. You know, there must not be an issue. When the reality is, you know, yes, you got in, but structurally speaking, and to give some context, you know, the way districts were drawn for IUSG diminished the ability of, say, minorities, since like numbers wise, we were, you know, marginalized students, BIPOC, et cetera, are in the minority, to be able to vote in preferred candidates that could speak to the issues and concerns that they have in terms of being students at IU. And so that was very disappointing, but the most promising out of, this situation was the solidarity that was built amongst students from various marginalized backgrounds. If any of you know the history of the Rainbow Coalition, the original Rainbow Coalition that started in 1969 by Fred Hampton, it was pivotal at its time because Chicago at its time was, and even today, was highly segregated. Even Dr. King, when he went to Chicago, he literally said that, what we see in Chicago is something unlike what we see in the South. And, people think that the North at the time was so much better than the South, but really things were being swept under the rug. And Fred Hampton was able to build like a solidarity amongst people, poor white people, Black people, Latinx people, etc., and mobilize them. And so with this, experience, though we were fighting like an oppressive institution, we were building a solidarity that I honestly think Fred Hampton would have been proud of, because we had so many people from different races, ethnicities, disability statuses, religious identities, etc.
Thank you. And yeah, and I really appreciate learning like the history of coalition building, especially around different issues and related to the civil rights movement. Rebecca.
Yeah, so pretty much Ashley and Lindsay described kind of the biggest obstacles that we faced. I think that for me, just seeing some of the most promising things amidst all the obstacles was that, just like Lindsay said, we had people opposing, really voicing those like negative and often blatantly racist opinions on kind of what we were trying to pursue. And one of the most frustrating things was that the opposition was considerably smaller than the proponents that were for this bill and that were for multicultural seats, right? We had hundreds of people sign this petition supporting it, and yet you had 3 or 4 people put at the same level as everyone supporting it and given the same platform to speak and given the same consideration, despite it being so much less and so much less representative as well of the student population. But one of the more promising things was that rallying kind of group around supporting this bill, and the amount of support that we got from people outside of Congress and even outside of like RCIU, people that weren't necessarily involved but saw that this was a need in the community, and signed the petition, shared it with others, even people outside of the IU community, people from different universities and places were supporting this bill. And so that was kind of one of the more promising things that I think encouraged RCIU to continue the fight, even though sometimes it seemed like it would just get shut down again.
Yes. So what are your hopes for a new representation in IU student government? And can you speak to what IU student government will look like after the change you advocated for? And for this, we'll start with Lindsay.
Yeah, I'd say, I guess most obviously our first vision of what IUSG looks like with these seats is saying a Congress that that is at least somewhat more, say, replicative of like the actual IU student body. Like IUSG was barely even meeting like the minimum in terms of like demographics on IU's campus. And so we just didn't see any visibility for us and our issues as students at IU, being students that experience racism, sexism, homophobia, ableism, etc. Like those concerns weren't even being met. Like IU itself has been very like proud of, say, their missions and efforts in DEI for decades. and IUSG didn't get a DEI committee until this last fall. Like it was, and even with that DEI committee, they barely had anyone to put on it because, you know, we weren't really represented in IUSG. So hoping now that we have students to speak to the issues that, you know, affect BIPOC students, affect students with disabilities, affect international students, and hoping that going forward, proposals for student life think about the various diverse stakeholders and keep them all in mind. And also, I'll just pass it to Rebecca and Ashley.
Rebecca?
Yeah, so I think looking to what's coming next, we're really excited to hopefully start as soon as possible on increasing the number of representation and like multicultural seats that are filled in Congress. And obviously that's there's a lot of interested groups already, people that have already applied, organizations that have applied, and Ashley can also speak to this. But I would say my hope is that people see this bill and understand that this is the bare minimum. It's just the start. It's not even enough to actually be representative and create equity for the groups that have been historically marginalized. And I think a lot of times with, you know, coalition building, with getting people to accomplish things as historic as the multicultural bill, because we acknowledge that it is historic. Nothing like this has ever been accomplished before. And other people had tried it. We were not the first ones to try it. It had been tried twice before, I think in the 60s and then in like the early 2000s, and it was shot down then. And this is the first time it's happened. But again, that's just one small step. It's the bare minimum. And there's so much more work that needs to be done. And so something that I think as RCIU, we acknowledge, like, it's really good to celebrate those wins, but also acknowledging that it's not the end of the road, right? Like there's still so much more that needs to be done. And so right now, the current struggle is trying to make sure that there isn't a lag on this, right? That we're not dragging our feet on getting groups into Congress and we're saying, okay, well, we passed the bill, so we're gonna wait for all these organizations to join. No, it's the job of Congress and the work of this coalition to reach out, to do the work. It's not about the community coming to us, it's about us going to the community, and that should kind of always be the approach. And so my hope is that we genuinely take that and do, you know, take the steps that we need to bring these organizations in and make it as inclusive as a space as possible.
Yeah, and Ashley?
Yeah, so Rebecca definitely touched on some of my points as well. Definitely not to take another semester getting these multicultural seats filled. We want to make sure that it's efficient and that we are being transparent with the process and reaching out to other organizations that have applied, because we've had many organizations express interest. We had many organizations back this bill. So we want to actually make sure we're implementing it and in a timely manner. What I hope that IUSG will look like after the changes have been made, you know, I want more diversity, more inclusion, which seems like a basic, but it's still something that we're still working towards, and it's not over. There's always more strides. There's so much students need here at IU. And I hope that once we get these seats filled, we can better represent the student body, and we can better aid students and, you know, help them with some of the things that are going on with COVID. You know, there's a lot that we don't really know, but once we get that representation, we should be able to better support, you know, our student body.
Thank you. That's a really good lead into the next question, which is, what are some other systemic changes, if any, that are on your radar, and what you see as next steps and goals for your coalition in the next year? And we'll start with Rebecca for this one.
So I think personally, one of my biggest goals that, again, is kind of part of the bare minimum, was that in trying to pass this multicultural bill, we realized that because IU student government had largely not been representative, there was kind of like a lack of foundation and base for having conversations about inequity and inequality and racism and just lack of inclusivity. People were not equipped with the language, the understanding, the tools to even engage in conversations about white supremacy, about racism, about gaslighting, about all these different topics that we're trying to combat. And so we need to create kind of like a baseline of knowledge for everyone to be able to engage in these, that like inevitably difficult conversations, but that need to be had. They're necessary. And so if IU Student Congress is trying to be representative of student needs and student voices, they need to have that understanding and knowledge. And so the next steps, which again are a bare minimum, at least for me in Congress, involve mandatory diversity training for everyone in IUSG, and then pushing that further and demanding that of the IU administration, because it's not yet a thing. A lot of offices do offer it, but it's not mandatory. And so that's where you see a lot of these issues with different professors and students that have, you know, faced and dealt with these racist incidents or discriminatory incidents or sexist incidents happening, because there isn't this like mandatory baseline of understanding about these different topics. So that's kind of the first next step. And then obviously making sure that we can increase representation, but also making the space inclusive, because it wouldn't matter, you know, if we have open seats for multicultural representatives and then they come into the space and don't feel welcome and feel shut out. So those are kind of the next steps, at least for me and in the next year.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. It does remind me of a talk I attended recently where someone was talking about, I think it was James Baldwin, who wrote about how like the experience of inviting marginalized groups in to participate often feels like inviting them into a burning building or inviting us into a burning building. And that spoke really powerfully. Ashley?
That's a really great point, Abby. Just to add to what Rebecca is saying, I definitely think that student involvement, getting a lot more students aware, because our students have a lot to offer. They have a lot of ideas. They know what's going on. And, you know, so does our IUSG. We have a lot of new candidates, a lot of new open spots. So kind of with this reform, getting more bills passed that correlate to like some student issues. We have a lot of bills in the works currently. There's a lot of different committees doing a lot of great things. And, you know, once we up student involvement on campus and like making IUSG a bigger part of student lives and making sure Rainbow Coalition is keeping IUSG accountable and keeping other fractures of the student body here at IU accountable, we can have like a better future. So that's something I'm pretty excited for when it comes to moving forward. And then like kind of what's to come to, you know, we're still working towards that. I think it's an everyday thing. We're like showing up every day. We're seeing what needs to be done. There's so much that needs to be done, and we have 4 years to get a lot of work in, and maybe less for some of us as well. So yeah, every day we're just like trying to strive for better and kind of seeing what, you know, needs to be changed, you know, next. So we're always coming up with different bills, and there's always different ideas floating around. So I think that we're still like a work in progress and what needs to be done. But what Rebecca mentioned, and then also adding getting students involved at an early age, is something that we're looking forward to.
And Lindsay?
Yeah, so I'd say I definitely, you know, say I agree with both everything that Ashley and Rebecca said, and I just kind of wanted to expand upon it in terms of, say, the phrase, or say like quote from James Baldwin you mentioned earlier, Abby, about like inviting marginalized communities into like a burning building. And so one of, you know, the main 3 asks that the Rising Rainbow Coalition had starting out was representation, transparency, and fund reallocation. And so, you know, we hit the mark of representation. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of representation, even though we got the bills passed, they're being implemented. But in still hitting on representation, I think we're starting to also kind of shift into, say, like transparency. IUSG as an entity has not been very transparent in terms of, you know, what's going on within the institution, in terms of having easily accessible, like it should be like public knowledge to students, what's going on within their student government. And that's not accessible. So transparency, I think, is the next steps. I actually talked to Ashley and Rebecca yesterday, giving some, suggestions, like maybe next bill could be like reporting requirements to ensure that, student organizations are receiving enough notice in time, maybe after like 2 weeks of submitting a proposal to see where like their application status is, or even creating possibly like inspector generals, which I'm sure many of you know of, who, are independent bodies within the United States government who look for waste, fraud, and abuse that's happening within departments or branches. And so I think that is honestly something IUSG needs to ensure that, especially in the situation of these seats, we've created this space, but I don't think it's like a well-functioning building in a sense. I think students are going into a burning building. Like Rebecca said, there needs to be, implicit bias, like trainings, etc. But there also needs to be structural changes, I think. And with those structural changes, I think there needs to be more accountability and transparency in how they're addressing structural issues.
Thank you so much. And so as a note to the audience, we're on our last structured question right now. And then after this, we will open up the floor to audience questions. So keeping in mind that one of the challenges of organizing at IU is the turnover of leadership due to graduation, what are your hopes for the longevity of the coalition and your vision of it in the future? And we'll start with Ashley for this one.
This is a really good question and it's super exciting. I think education is number one. And kind of like with me coming in, Rebecca has started in the summertime. And because they shared like this knowledge and shared this opportunity, I was able to come in. Lindsay keeps connected with us, even though she has graduated. So honestly, building the community is number one. And then also informing those and letting those who are younger than us take active roles in what's going on. And Rebecca definitely can attest to this too. But like once IUSG kind of graduates, there's a period of like basically someone new coming in and then they're starting from nothing. So if we can have a way to like let the like new generations know what has been done before and having a proper like guideline of what has happened and where they left off, we can have a better system of building versus restructuring each IUSG Congress or, each coalition. Definitely like passing the baton is super important, and getting those students to care and letting them know why it affects them is super important and a great way to, get them involved.
Lindsay?
Yeah, so building off of that, I definitely think as well that, creating this sort of pipeline of students to, stay involved in RCIU and the issues that, we try to address. I know previously and like right now, we've been really focused on IUSG, but in terms of the students of RCIU, we're trying to tackle various problems across the IU community. I've graduated, so sometimes I give a little advice since the month that I've graduated on little things, but I stay connected also in terms of, say, if there's going to be like a community event within Bloomington, since I am also the founder and CEO of the Rising Rainbow Coalition, which is a statewide organization. And so upcoming, we're trying to do like a mobilizing event with the various rainbow coalitions, so RCIU and RCC within Bloomington soon. But other than that, just maintaining connectedness, honestly, even after graduation, slightly giving, say, guidance to those who are still there, but also maintaining a sort of sustainability through recruitment, again, bringing on freshmen, sophomores, and making sure like they stay in this pipeline of, say, like RCIU to stay involved and tackle issues within the IU community and, say, like the Bloomington, Monroe County area.
And Rebecca?
Yeah, so I think the topic of longevity and trying to keep things going is exactly what, you know, Ashley and Lindsay were talking about, that like community building aspect, passing down information. But I think one big thing also is, it's two things. It's transition and transparency. So offering that transitional information to incoming generations. So like it was mentioned, you know, a lot of times the university will use this as a strategy to kind of decrease the amount of power that student voices have, because they know that we're graduating in 4 years. And so if they can hold us out long enough through, you know, pointless committee meetings, pointless, you know, just running around and trying to find the right person to talk to, you know, by the end of our 4 years, they don't have to deal with the issue. And so then the new incoming class, the freshmen come in, and then by their sophomore year, maybe they realize, oh, these are the issues, this is what I need to be fighting for. And then they spend their junior and senior years trying to do that. And then it's just an endless cycle of never getting anything substantial done. And it's definitely very strategic. And so what helps with that is obviously like having that community building, right? Passing it down to the generations that are coming in, but then at the same time, having transparency. You know, we would have never known that past IUSG people had tried to pass similar multicultural bills had it not been for the archived bills and legislation that had been filed. You know, if they didn't file even legislation that had been opposed and turned down, we wouldn't have known that. And that was really helpful to us to see and learn, you know, why was it that they didn't pass? What were the reasons? How can we now strategize to work around the reasons why it wasn't passed before, and how we can make it successful this time around? And so a lot of it has to do with transparency. Like we mentioned, there's a lot of bills and efforts to kind of make IUSG more transparent. And I think as a whole, the administration, like IU's administration, needs to be more transparent with kind of the information and the historical reasoning why certain things haven't been done to increase diversity and inclusion and equity. And a lot of that comes from looking at why that hasn't been the reason in the past and how we can combat that in the future.
Yep, thank you so much. And I think, is that it? Or I forget if I missed. Okay. So we're going to open it up for the audience questions right now. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hand and I'll call on you, or you can post it in the chat and I'll read it.
Abby, I have a question. Okay, I always have questions. Sorry. First of all, you are amazing. So I was lucky enough to go to some of your events and rallies. I am the 9th District Chair of the Indiana Latino Democratic Caucus. And I just became chair in July, but I connected with Latinos Unidos at IU, and they are part of the coalition. And Evelyn kind of just would share on her Instagram. And so I'm like, I can go to that. So I would go to like the rallies at like Dunn Meadow or at the gates, and just see just the community that you brought together. It was just nothing short of incredible. And just kind of following your journey and the strategy, because you're right, it has been tried before, and especially during COVID, right? To be able to like be smart and to mobilize and to be strategic in a time that is unprecedented, right? That we've never really seen before. So I just want to say you guys are amazing, and it was just incredible to watch from afar and just be in awe of the systemic change that you were able to enact. So thank you, because nothing happens unless we make it happen. So, but my question, I guess, too, is just kind of like the dynamics of it. So I saw in the IDS that I shared in the chat that it looks like is it a third of the seats now will be is it like a third of the IUSG seats will be held by just different multicultural organizations? And then how does that impact or does it not impact like how the executive board kind of is a member? Because I went to IU for undergrad, but it has been a while, it's been a long time. So I don't remember what that looks like. Does that make sense? Like what the like executive board and the legislature and then any of those appointed positions? Because when I went to IU, I do remember that the budget was crazy big. Like they had like a 6-figure budget to work with. And I don't know if that has changed or what kind of impact the legislature will have on it.
Yeah.
I guess I had questions for anybody. Yeah.
Yeah. I can go ahead and answer that. So the bill is focused mainly on Congress because Congress is supposed to be the, you know, representative body, direct representative body of the students. And so the executive side, they're elected, right, in like yearly elections, but that's a little bit different because in the exec branch, they have a lot more discretion over who they get to, you know, pick for their cabinet. And so they're not really elected positions. A lot of times those executive positions for those different committees are approved by Congress. So Congress kind of has a little bit more discretion on who gets put on the executive branch or who gets approved to be on it. Because they confirm like the chief of staff and all the other officers and things like that. So by changing the demographic makeup of Congress, you're also changing who gets discretion on the executive branch, which before technically didn't really have any oversight because it was just the same kind of people picking each other. And so like that wasn't helpful at all. So in terms of that, and then also Congress gets to approve the budget that's created by the executive branch. And so that was actually another huge issue that we had in the summer where personally, I and a few other people disagreed with the use of the budget, especially like you said, during unprecedented times, during the pandemic. There's a lot of things we wanted to put money to. And so part of that was completely up to 20 people that were not representative in the summer to vote on this budget. And so part of increasing representation through this multicultural bill also helps with the discretion of how this budget gets voted on and whether or not it gets approved. And so the budget, that's kind of how this bill influences the budget. But yeah, the amount of money has gone down significantly because IUSG has used the money very like reactionary, like in a reactionary way where they kind of just flail around and try to throw money at initiatives, but you know, don't put it towards anything concrete and substantial. And so to increase that amount of money that we get, the funding, we're trying to make it so that we actually have concrete goals and substantial reasons to use that money. And a lot of that obviously comes from representation of communities that need that money the most. We're going to put forth those ideas and goals on how to best use that money. Whereas before you had people who were like, well, I don't really need the money, so I don't know where we should put it, you know? So yeah, that, I don't know if that answered your question, but.
Any other questions?
Abby, I actually have a question because I don't know what the dynamics and the relationships with like the administration at IU, but IU does have, well, Michael McRobbie is leaving this year. IU will be getting a new president. And so I'm just kind of wondering if IU student government plays any role in the process of getting a new president or specifically Rainbow Coalition at IU, if you have any opinions or have you made any statements about the decision on the new president?
This is a really good question. Actually, it was interesting because I was kind of learning more about how the process works. And I don't believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rebecca, that IUSG has much say. I definitely think it's a very political thing. When it comes to nominations, there's a way where you can nominate a candidate, but I'm not sure how big of influence students have on that process unless, of course, we band together and we feel like we're going for a certain candidate or I know that usually our candidates are from the Republican Party, and that even though our college is more so Democratic when it comes to how we vote as students, it's a little bit different when it comes to who's our president here at IU. So I'm curious to see if that will be like changing soon. I definitely know that there are some cool nominees out there that has been like name has been tossed in a hat, but I don't think it's made it to the right person. So I'm super interested to be speaking probably more with the Rainbow Coalition about those candidates that I've found recently. But I think it's something that we haven't really had the opportunity to elaborate more. And definitely correct me if I'm wrong, Rebecca, too, because she's been in IUSG longer than I have.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add to that is IUSG doesn't really have say. I think that's a mistake. I think we should. I think the selection process for the new president is just completely inequitable and doesn't make any sense. It doesn't serve the needs of the students, certainly. And yeah, I think there's a new bill that we actually just wrote that is a proclamation, so it's not necessarily substantive, but it works towards demanding that the administration allow for students to have an audience with the president, which it doesn't happen. IU Student Congress and government doesn't really have any specific link to the president. And so we're trying to work on a bill that changes that and makes it kind of more mandatory and a pattern that future presidents, especially since we're getting a new one, kind of have to follow and adhere to, because as we know, Mick Robbie has not been known for his connection to students or listening to them.
I have a question, actually. Sorry if I jumped in on anyone that was.
Lindsay, did you had something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, and I can fact check it when like the next question is asked. But I think possibly, the president of IUSG, her name's Rachel. I think she has some say in terms of being on an advisory committee, but not like on the actual like selection committee. And I can also like fact check that and put that in the chat. But I think when I was looking at, who's on this committee that's choosing our next Indiana University president, I think I did see her on like an advisory committee.
Charlotte, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just curious if there, and this is, I'm a staff member at IU, so I'm not a part of this body either, but the BFCA, the Bloomington Faculty Council, are they useful to the coalition? Because like, I know that they've had similar issues with administration, generally speaking, about how the upper levels of the IU machine, right, don't necessarily work for the people that they're supposed to support, both faculty and students. So I was wondering if there's any opportunity, do you see an opportunity there, or is it kind of pulling at straws?
I think that the process is so secretive. By the
Right.
time that we know anything, they probably have candidates in mind already.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that the Board of Trustees play a big role in that.
Yes.
There's no way of that, because I actually was asking about this a while ago, because I'm like, we need a president that represents the student body. And that's why we have so much conflict with our administration, because there is no, we're IUSG, we're part of it, but there's no big connection. And like one of the questions I got asked before, well, I don't think anybody asked me, but a big question is like, are you willing to speak out against the university if you're a part of IUSG? And I think that that's ridiculous, because I thought that I would be working with my administration. I thought my administration sees me as like the future. You're teaching me. I'm here for higher education. We're always taught to push the bounds of our thoughts, push the bounds of our knowledge, achieve more than what was previously achieved. So yeah, by the time we know anything, they've already had a candidate in mind, and now we have a new president, right? Without batting an eye. So I definitely think there is opportunity. I just think that there's not enough education, right? A lot of people don't even know about this transition, even students, like nobody is in the know. And if we kind of like, you know, band together, kind of like a rainbow coalition thing, then there is a lot of opportunity to have a greater influence of who serves us as president.
Yeah, thank you.
Also, I added the link in the chat. Yes, the IUSG president is actually on the main search committee, not the advisory committee, but she's the only IUSG entity on that committee.
And she also serves on the BFC. She's invited along with the graduate student government president, and they get to speak on issues, and they have like a lot of time, but they don't really have any like voting powers. They don't have any like real say, so they can go and appeal to the BFC. But of course, that's just one student that's kind of representative of all students, which doesn't always work. And so, yeah, the BFC, I feel like, is very detached from listening to student concerns, apart from our IUSG president being on there.
Yeah, it's funny because there's a lot of overlap between the concerns I hear from people I know on that with your concerns, and it's like, again, why? And I think this is more. I think the BFC should be the ones to kind of work on opening the door to students, right? But I don't know that they think about that, and since I'm not a member, I don't know that I can make them. But you know, fingers crossed that someone does. I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to add to that because I definitely agree. I know with say like our initiatives and like other initiatives, I know one student who's a part of our RCIU, she was trying to, she created a petition to, re-implement SF grading, pass-fail grading policies for the fall semester of 2020. And so basically, I think she was kind of having to use leadership members within IUSG as a liaison to talk to the Bloomington Faculty Council. But she kind of talked about like the difficulties in that, sometimes when you have to have a liaison between you and another person, there's kind of like this game of telephone. Maybe, if things are misconstrued, maybe they don't necessarily want to ask for what you're asking for because they don't want to be the one to ask that question. So I definitely think in terms of IU administration and various committees, councils, etc., that they do need to open the door more for like the student body to be involved rather than, delegating or deferring a lot of their questions to a select few. We have to, take into consideration that even though these students are elected in some positions or appointed, they still don't they still aren't the only voice. They aren't indicative of all the voices on IU's campus. So I think there needs to be a platform to hear all voices as well as those in those leadership positions.
Yeah.
Jess has a question as well. So considering that the IU president is over all 9 campuses, does the Rainbow Coalition or IU student government have any outreach to other IU campuses on issues like these? And anyone can answer.
Yeah, this is a nice question as well. You guys are asking us really good questions. I think that we're still doing that outreach process, right? So there's so many people that attend IU that, are still learning about, even the multicultural referendum or just like what Rainbow Coalition is when it comes to getting other campuses involved. Because there's a lot of students that's a part of Rainbow Coalition, but we're still like working to like pass the word. So it's really difficult to, make those connections across campuses and we're students and, that outreach process is, major. So I think that that's a really good idea to do. And I definitely will be bringing it up in our next meeting, but I don't think that we've gotten there yet. I'm not sure if other people have been thinking about it. We have weekly meetings pretty often. But yeah, it's a huge feat to get like other people informed and then also reach out. And, it would be better if we had like administration that like allowed for better interconnective connections, because we kind of have to make those bridges ourselves, and you know, it takes some time.
Yeah, I'd say it will definitely take some time. Like just starting out, I think Rainbow Coalition at IU started like first week of October in terms of mobilizing. And so now we're about, say, like 4 or 5 months in, with like breaks involved and people, you know, still having to worry about classes, full-time jobs, etc., and trying to mobilize across, you know, various campuses has somewhat started. I know we're in like cahoots or communication with people at IUPUI. They've been pretty supportive. There hasn't necessarily been a Rainbow Coalition that has started there yet. But I think in the near future, especially in the years to come, like Ashley said, that there shouldn't be, you know, any problem with branching out. We already have diverse coalitions, you know, say starting on, you know, various IU campuses and other like Indiana colleges and universities. And so I think there's definitely a lot of room for the mobilization of, you know, various students at the various sister campuses and other universities in the state, because, you know, the issues we're experiencing at IU are not only, say, like specific to IU. They're pretty sometimes general in a sense that, you know, marginalized students continue to be marginalized on the other campuses throughout Indiana. And so the structural issues that we saw in, say, for our IUSG student government, it's seen at other campuses. So I think there's definitely a future in terms of mobilizing with other students across the state.
Tammy Jo was asking, is there a list of what student groups are part of the Rainbow Coalition at IU Bloomington?
Yes, I believe there's a few lists somewhere, which I could probably find somewhere.
Yeah, I think we have a doc that says like it's like over 40 organizations. We do have a doc. I can try to get that copied and paste it in the chat.
Yeah, I can. I have like the PowerPoint presentation from the coalition building that has like all of the groups. I could probably link it too.
And Jess says in the comments, when I went to Ohio State, we would have a yearly meeting with student leaders across the campuses. It allowed those who are not at a main campus to have a voice. And I think about that often when considering IUB versus the whole IU community. That's definitely something I've thought of as well. Natalia,
especially because I think the student body makeup at the satellite campuses probably need more help than they currently have.
Natalia asked, could allied student groups be a part of the Rainbow Coalition? Or what's the process of joining the coalition if you're an allied student group?
Yeah, honestly, any person, you know, can be a part of Rainbow Coalition. So definitely, yes. We do have an Instagram page, which I can link in the group me. Usually like people send DMs to the Instagram page and we get them connected in ways that they ask to be connected. I think that we're always getting new students, we're always getting new interests, and we're always getting new people with ideas. So definitely it's open to all students. And I think that's what makes it super cool, because you can commit as you see fit. You know, everybody plays their role, whether they can only give a little bit or they can give a lot when it comes to time and commitment or ideas or involvement, which makes like this coalition so great. That's just my extra tidbit, but I will link the Instagram.
So I think we're kind of coming up to the end of our time here. So I just wanted to thank all of our amazing panelists for all of the knowledge that they have instilled upon us today, and especially for their time at the at such a busy time of the semester. Lindsay, you had your hand up.
Oh, I can wait till you're done. I just kind of wanted to give like a brief like announcement of something that RRC is doing that could benefit the community, and I could do it at the end.
Oh no, you can go ahead. Yeah, and then-
Oh yeah, I just wanted to put on people's radar that in celebration of Black History Month, Rising Rainbow Coalition is doing a book giveaway for Black youth. So right now, since we're kind of in our pre-launch stages, we've been doing like book giveaways based upon various history and heritage months. So we did one for like Latinx Heritage Month, for Native American Heritage Month, and now we're doing Black History Month. And so I can put the link in the chat. And so basically you can just sign up to say like, get a book for say a kid who you think could really benefit from having a book that promotes healthy identity development and helps with self-esteem and confidence. And so, yeah, I'll put that in the chat, but that's all I had to say.
That's amazing. I will definitely look for that link. So just wanted to let's all thank our speakers today for the time that they've generously shared with us, and also, especially at such a busy time of the semester when things are starting to get busy with school and midterms coming up and stuff like that. So really, really appreciate the work that they continue to do on campus and off campus, especially in these issues of diversity and inclusion. And so with that said, I think that's it for today. And I'm really excited to see what you're doing in the future as well.
Yes, thank you so much. Lindsay, did you want to say something else?
Oh no, I just wanted to say thank you. But yeah, the link is in the chat. So if you would like to get a free book in celebration and commemoration of Black History Month and give it to, say, a child in your life, then yeah, hit that link.
Awesome.
So thank you so much for having us.
I clicked on the link. I have a couple of kids, so I'm going to go for it. So I'd just like to thank the panelists for coming today. This has been an amazing chat. I'd like to thank Abby for putting together the panel for today. And also like to thank all of our members and guests for coming and supporting this chapter meeting and listening to our panelists. So thank you so much. And just a reminder that our next chapter meeting is on March 28th from noon to 1:30. Our panelists will be announced soon, so stay tuned. And we actually pushed it a little later this next month because of spring break. So sorry, IU, you don't get spring break this year, but anyway, thanks so much, everybody, and have a great afternoon. Bye.